The early evening sky over East Midlands Airport was muted, a flat grey stretching to the horizon. The Boeing 737-400 of British Midland Flight 92 cut through the clouds, its fuselage humming steadily, unaware that the calm would soon fracture. Inside the cockpit, two experienced pilots ran through routine checklists. Instruments glowed faintly in the dim light, each dial a sentinel for the aircraft's performance. Moments earlier, maintenance crews had cleared the aircraft for flight after routine inspections, including an engine swap several days prior. On the flight deck, the first officer's fingers traced switches and levers with habitual precision. There was no sign of immediate danger, only the rhythm of flight nearing its final descent. Below, the runway light began to glitter through the low cloud cover, marking the approach corridor. Outside, the wind whispered across the wings, carrying the scent of rain-soaked tarmac. Within minutes, the routine would unravel. A single fan blade, hidden within the engine, had fractured, a mechanical anomaly invisible to both pilots and instruments. In the cockpit, the subtle vibrations went unnoticed at first. Then, a fluctuation on the engine gauge hinted at imbalance. The pilots exchanged calm words, instinctual checks and balances in motion. In these fleeting seconds, decisions would shape the fate of all on board. Time seemed to stretch, each second heavy with consequence. The descent continued, clouds parting just enough to reveal glimpses of the ground. Outside, the world remained serene, unaware of the impending struggle. Inside, the pilots engaged in the silent choreography of monitoring, responding, and interpreting, a delicate equilibrium on the knife edge of technology and human judgment. The flight was approaching its most critical phase, and the first cracks of failure were already present, invisible yet decisive. British Midland Airways, in 1989, was a growing regional carrier connecting key cities across the United Kingdom and Europe. Flight 92 was a routine service from London Heathrow to Belfast, a short-haul route flown multiple times daily. The aircraft assigned, a Boeing 737-400, was a relatively new addition to the fleet, featuring updated engines and modernized avionics compared to earlier 737 models. For the airline, operational efficiency and schedule adherence were paramount, particularly in competitive European market. The crew had been carefully selected. The captain, seasoned with thousands of hours in multi-engine jet operations, had recently transitioned from older 737 models. The first officer, while younger, were proficient and familiar with the aircraft systems. Both were trained extensively on emergency procedures and engine management. Yet even extensive preparation could not anticipate every variable that the flight might encounter. Maintenance history played a subtle but critical role. Days before the flight, the left engine underwent a replacement due to an internal fault. Technicians followed established procedures, conducting inspections and tests. Records indicated all systems functioned nominally. Yet, hidden stress fractures within a fan blade went undetected, a flaw invisible to routine examination. Weather conditions added another layer of complexity. East Midlands Airport was experiencing low cloud cover, intermittent rain, and moderate crosswinds. Visibility was sufficient for an instrument approach, but the clouds reduced visual cues and eliminated any natural horizon for pilots. Environmental factors were unremarkable for a trained crew, but they amplified the consequences of any mechanical or procedural misjudgment. On the day of the accident, the aircraft was fully loaded with passengers and crew. The flight plan was standard, but each stage, from takeoff to descent, required precise coordination between crew and aircraft systems. In the cockpit, the instruments and displays formed the pilot's lifeline, translating invisible forces, thrust, drag, torque, temperature, into readable data. Outside, the world was calm and routine, masking the unseen stresses within the engine and the delicate balance of flight management. This combination of factors, airline pressures, crew proficiency, maintenance history, and environmental conditions, created a context in which a single hidden mechanical failure could cascade into a critical emergency. The stage was set for a chain of events that would test both human judgment and technical resilience. The Boeing 737-400, a stretched variant of the classic 737, was designed for short to medium-haul operations. Its twin CFM56-3 engines offered improved fuel efficiency and quieter operation compared to earlier Pratt & Whitney models. However, like all turbofan engines, they were sensitive to internal metal fatigue and required meticulous inspection. On Flight 92, the left engine contained a fan blade with a pre-existing stress fracture, likely originating from manufacturing tolerances or cyclic load fatigue. This flaw was small and undetectable through standard visual inspection, a latent vulnerability in the system. Structurally, the aircraft was sound. Flight control surfaces, ailerons, elevators, rudder responded precisely to inputs. The cockpit instrumentation was modern for the era, displaying engine parameters, airspeed, altitude, and system alerts. However, some indicators lacked redundancy or clear differentiation for critical failures, making it challenging for the crew to identify the exact source of an anomaly in real time. Crew: the captain had accumulated over 8,000 flight hours, with a significant proportion on the 737 family. His approach style was methodical, procedural, and cautious. The first officer, though less experienced, had completed type-specific training and demonstrated proficiency in simulator exercises. Together, they formed a competent team, yet both were human. Under stress, cognitive biases, such as confirmation bias, could influence their interpretation of instrument readings. Crew resource management, CRM, practices were in place, but in high-stress, time-critical situations, habitual responses often override procedural checklists. When faced with conflicting indications of engine performance, the pilot's training emphasized quick recognition and response, but misidentification of which engine was malfunctioning would prove pivotal. Environment: East Midlands Airport was experiencing low cloud cover, visibility approximately 5 kilometers, with intermittent drizzle and crosswinds of 12 to 15 knots. The approach corridor was equipped with instrument landing systems, ILS, but the weather reduced natural visual references. For pilots, the lack of a clear horizon increases reliance on instruments, leaving little room for perceptual error. The aircraft descent path required precise throttle adjustments to maintain glide slope and airspeed. Under normal conditions, minor deviations are easily corrected. Under stress, even small misjudgments, compounded by mechanical anomalies, could escalate rapidly. Systems: the CFM56 engines featured sophisticated monitoring systems, including EGT, exhaust gas temperature, gauges, N1 and N2 rotational speed indicators, and vibration sensors. However, the early generation monitoring systems did not provide clear diagnostic differentiation between left and right engine anomalies under certain failure modes. When the fractured fan blade began to affect the left engine, vibration increased and thrust output fluctuated. The cockpit displayed alerts consistent with an engine problem, but subtle cues were open to misinterpretation. The pilots, trained to respond to single-engine emergencies, face a rapidly evolving scenario in which instinct, procedure, and instrument interpretation intersected and ultimately conflicted. The chain of latent failures, the hidden mechanical flaw, the limited redundancy in engine diagnostics, and environmental stresses combined with human factors to create a situation in which even highly trained professionals could misidentify the source of the problem. Every system was working as designed, yet the combination of circumstances pushed the aircraft beyond safe operational limits. As Flight 92 descended through the low cloud layer, the left engine began to emit subtle but irregular vibrations. The CFM56 fan blade fracture caused a gradual loss of thrust, accompanied by oscillations that the cockpit instruments translated into fluctuating N1 and EGT readings. The pilots noticed the anomaly initiating the standard engine failure checklist. In the confined space of the cockpit, seconds stretched. The captain instinctively reduced power on what he believed was the affected engine. Simultaneously, the first officer cross-checked readings, but the visual cues and procedural expectations misled them. In a brief, critical moment, thrust was reduced on the wrong engine, the right, healthy engine, while the failing left engine remained at higher power. The aircraft behavior changed almost immediately. Airspeed dropped despite apparent throttle input, and the plane began to bank subtly. Instruments and sensory feedback conflicted, creating a challenge for even experienced pilots. The descent, previously stable, became uneven. The first officer called for corrective action. The captain responded, but confusion compounded. Cognitive workload spiked as the aircraft deviated from its intended glide path. Externally, the world below remained obscured by clouds. Pilots relied on instruments entirely, yet the combination of misidentified engine and subtle aerodynamic changes masked the severity of the situation. The aircraft began an uncommanded roll, small at first, then increasingly pronounced as lift decrease on the wing affected by asymmetric thrust. Attempts to stabilize the plane through rudder and aileron adjustments provided only temporary correction. The tension in the cockpit was silent, professional, measured, but decisive actions were now impossible without correcting the fundamental misidentification. Second became critical. The flight path descended below safe altitude, leaving minimal margin for recovery. Despite immediate application of emergency procedures, the chain of mechanical failure and human misjudgment converged. Flight 92 impacted the runway approach terrain, the aircraft kinetic energy and momentum dictated by earlier miscalculations. The crash was sudden, decisive, yet visually and narratively, it was a culmination of layered errors rather than a single catastrophic event. The instruments, procedures, environment, and human interpretation had all intersected in a fraction of time, leaving the crew unable to avert disaster. Emergency services arrived promptly, navigating the rain-slick runway and adjacent terrain. Fire crews and rescue personnel worked under difficult conditions, yet by the time they reached the wreckage, the scale of the accident was already clear. Lives were lost, and the aircraft was structurally compromised. But the focus of aviation investigators was on understanding the why rather than dwelling on the tragedy. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB, launched a meticulous inquiry. Teams examined every component: engines, flight controls, cockpit instruments, and maintenance records. Particular attention was given to the left engine fan blade, which revealed a fatigue fracture consistent with long-term, undetectable stress. Analysis of flight data recorders reconstructed throttle positions, engine parameters, and control inputs down to the second. Cockpit voice recordings offered insight into crew communication, revealing the critical misidentification of the malfunctioning engine. Investigators identified a cascade of contributory factors. Mechanical failure. The fractured fan blade initiated the sequence, reducing engine thrust unpredictably. Human factors. The crew misidentified the failing engine, applying emergency procedures to the wrong side, a classic case of error propagation. Procedural limitations. Engine monitoring systems and checklists did not adequately differentiate left and right engine anomalies under the specific failure mode experienced. Environmental influence. Low clouds and reduced visual cues amplified reliance on instruments, constraining human perception. The AAIB emphasized that the accident was not the result of gross negligence, but of complex interaction between latent mechanical vulnerability and human decision-making under stress. Recommendations focus on procedural clarity, training enhancements, and improvements in engine monitoring systems to prevent misidentification of critical failures. The accident also had broader industry repercussions. Airlines reviewed maintenance protocols, emphasizing more sophisticated, non-destructive testing techniques for engine components. Pilot training curricula were updated to reinforce recognition of asymmetric engine failures, and cockpit procedures were refined to reduce cognitive overload during emergencies. Public and media attention was intense, yet the investigation remained scientific, methodical, and unemotional. Aviation professionals recognized the value of the incident as a case study in risk management, error chain analysis, and the limitations of even well-trained crews operating within complex mechanical systems. The aftermath underscored a central truth of aviation safety. Accidents are rarely the result of a single cause. They emerge from convergence of multiple factors, each individually manageable but collectively dangerous. The industry's response sought not only to understand but to prevent repetition, turning tragedy into opportunity for systemic improvement. British Midland Flight 92 left an enduring imprint on aviation safety, not through spectacle, but through measured learning. The accident highlighted how even routine flights could be vulnerable to a chain of latent failures, mechanical, human, and environmental. In response, regulatory authorities and airlines implemented multiple changes. Engine inspection protocols evolved to include more sophisticated, non-destructive testing, capable of identifying internal fatigue cracks before they could propagate. Cockpit procedures were revised to ensure clear identification of failing engines, reducing the risk of misapplied emergency actions. Training programs emphasized scenario-based exercises, where pilots practice response to asymmetric thrust under instrument-only conditions. Crew resource management received renewed focus, reinforcing communication, verification, and cross-checking in time-critical emergencies. The ripple effects extended to aircraft design. Engine monitoring systems incorporated more precise diagnostic alerts, improving differentiation between left and right engine anomalies. Flight data recording and cockpit instrumentation were enhanced, giving crews greater situational awareness and decision-making clarity. For passengers, industry professionals, and investigators alike, the legacy of Flight 92 is sober and instructive. It demonstrates that safety is an ongoing process, an accumulation of small improvements, each preventing the convergence of errors that can lead to disaster. Modern aviation culture embraces this philosophy. Every mechanical fault, every procedural gap, every environmental variable is an opportunity for vigilance and improvement. The memory of Flight 92 was preserved not in spectacle but in quiet reflection. Its lessons continue to guide maintenance engineers, pilots, and regulators. In the cockpit, the echo of that flight remains, a reminder that diligence, procedure, and measured attention to subtle signs are the ultimate safeguards. As the aircraft took to the skies each day afterward, the aviation community carried forward a profound understanding. Every system, every procedure, every human action contributes to the invisible lattice of safety. Flight 92's legacy is the invisible work that prevents the next accident, a testament to learning, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of precision.